The people of the UK have finally had enough. 200,000 say hell no to tyranny and heck yeah to Christ the King. Charlie Kirk's assassination becomes a global watershed event. But what did Charlie say about the Pope of the Synodal Church? Pope Leo's first public interview. Now, Father Jimmy Martin, he says Leo is continuing the vision of Pope Francis. Funny, but the mainstream media disagree. So who's got the right take? And finally, if Leo is Francis 2.0, why did he put the Latin Mass back on the table? It ain't over, folks, until the fat lady sings. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt. This is The Remnant Underground. You know, that introduction is interesting. Those presses are actually cranking off the Remnant newspaper. There's actually a picture, an image of my father working on this newspaper 35 years ago. It's kind of cool. The new one, hot off the press, Our Lady of Sorrows is on the cover. Do consider subscribing to the newspaper since it keeps the lights on and the cameras rolling here in the underground. Good news now. Great news. Well, you know, it's weird. It's like the Dickens things. These are the best of times, these are the worst of times. Certainly the worst of times in a lot of ways, but man, people are finally waking up.
More than 100,000 people gathering to march in central London, a sea of flags. Unite the Kingdom was the all-encompassing slogan, drawn widely enough to mean different things for different people, whether that was free speech or immigration. And what's newer too is the overt displays of Christian nationalism. When the crowd assembled, they were led in a chant of Christ as King, and then the Lord's Prayer.
Hallowed be thy name.
I mean, doesn't that just do the heart good, Walt? 150,000 people. Yeah. And they didn't expect it. I mean, that was completely, and again, I'm sure it has something to do with the fallout from the Charlie Kirk assassination, but you know, it's just amazing to see so many people are done. They're sick and tired of it, right? And of course, the idiots in the media, they're casting these English patriots as everything from dangerous Nazi nationalists to violent extremists, of course. Now that's really rich, coming from the same talking heads who described this as a peaceful protest. Hard to believe, Walter, we lived through that, isn't it? Do you remember looking out the front door of the house and seeing the glow, all Halloween orange and chimney red of Minneapolis burning? Such a crazy, compared to what happened here in Minneapolis during BLM, and despite what the media talking heads are saying, this Unite the Kingdom rally was a pleasant neighborhood block party. You know, no police stations were burned to the ground, just a bunch of Christian guys holding up crosses and images of Christ, blue-collar fellas chanting, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and Christ is King. But somehow, despite the coverage, despite the dangerous Nazi nationalists, somehow everyone over there at that rally managed to stay alive. Quite peaceful. In fact, it kind of reminded me of this. This is London from 1927. It's the Feast of Our Lady of Carmel. Let's just take that in for a moment, shall we? Just behold the rigid traditionalism of the past on full display. Just a few decades before Vatican II detonated, and just before the world fell into such Luciferian chaos that now the good people of the world don't know which bathroom to use.
What is a woman? I don't even know how to answer that.
Now, how in the world did we get, I mean, that's not even funny. It would be hilarious if it weren't dead serious. These people are serious. And why are they running around like that? Because all the adults have left the room. You know, because the world's most recognized moral authority essentially replaced the gospel of Jesus Christ with this bizarre, bastardized, social uplift gospel of ecumenical dialogue and, of course, the brotherhood of man. Something that even the pontiff himself would eventually come out and, well, confirm.
Il mio Dio è più importante del tuo.
But my God is more important than your God.
È vero quello?
Is that true?
C'è un solo Dio lì. E noi sono idiomi, cammino, lingue per arrivare a Dio.
There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God.
Qualcuno è Sikh, qualcuno musulmano, qualcuno hindi, qualcuno cristiano,
Indo,
ma
Christian.
sono diversi cammini.
There are different paths.
Understood? Ma
Man, I tell you, that was a reign of terror, you know? And so much for history's Catholic missionaries, the heroes, you know, who laid down their lives for the one true church of Jesus Christ, outside of which, well, there used to be no salvation according to the Catholic Church. Let's go back there, Walter. It's interesting. I just noticed when watching that. Look at that. Just right down sitting to the Pope's left and not applauding at all. There he is, Singapore's Cardinal Go. Remember him?
On the other hand, those who try to be faithful to the gospel themselves are confused. Even bishops are confused, including cardinals. We are confused as to exactly what is the church teaching with respect to certain moral issues. But at the same time, if they have difficulties, we will journey with them. And this is where the synodal process is important. But it does not mean to say we should compromise our teaching so that the world will find it more acceptable. If that is the case, I think we are deceiving the world.
Right.
People they've had enough. And if you didn't realize that before, well, you certainly can see it now in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, which is turning out to be a watershed event that has removed the blindfold from the eyes of millions of people all around the world. And by the way, Charlie Kirk, of course, was no fan of the patron Pope of synodality.
I can't get over the idea of this Marxist who calls himself the head of your church being a representation of Christ our Lord. I mean that as someone who loves the Catholic impact on the world, that says it openly, and by the fruit you will know it, and you have very Marxist fruit.
You know, you really got to wonder, I mean, how many people just never bothered to convert to the Catholic faith because of the scandal that was Pope Francis. And Charlie Kirk's going to get into it in a little bit. We'll show you the clips of him getting into the specifics, the climate change nonsense that became the new credo for the Pope, the pro-homosexual blessing and all of that. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. I want to just first remind everybody that the Catholic Identity Conference, which is going to be right into all this, it's right around the corner. In fact, I guess we're about last chance to sign up, I guess. Just a few seats left. This is the largest meeting of the clans of the year. And I really need your help this year because we're going to have this global rosary act of reparation. I'm so excited about it. I think this is so important. It's going to be an act of reparation for that abomination of desolation in the holy place, namely St. Peter's Basilica, that happened a couple of weeks ago. I really need you to help me out. We need to fill every single seat in the House for the 5 bishops that are going to be on hand and for all the great speakers that will be there. We've also opened the Catholic Identity Conference live stream service now, the link right down here in the show notes, so that act of reparation will truly be a global event. It'll be a shot heard around the world. We need to do this, and we need to do it right away. So click that link, and hopefully I will see you in a couple of weeks in Pittsburgh. And again, it's important to stress the theme of the Catholic Identity Conference, which is all about spiritual warfare. It really is crucial that we talk about this because everything's coming to a head. Everybody knows, this can't go on much longer, right? And quite frankly, specifically, now with people getting gunned down in the street, having their throats slit on trains for no reason, and then kids getting shot while going to mass in Catholic churches, right? Massive persecution of Christians worldwide, massive apostasy. Well, in a moment like this, any further talk about synodality has got to stop. I mean, it's literally now in bad taste. We're going to listen to you. Okay, that's fantastic. Well, meanwhile, we're dying out here, Synodality truly is, now it's become an insult to the memory of the dead. That's how bad things have come. We need a little more from the Catholic Church than babbling on and on and on about synodality. So at the CIC, we really hope to put the Vatican and everyone else on notice. We're done. We are totally, completely, absolutely done with synodality.
Stop spinning in circles in a process that has not awakened love for Jesus Christ in a single soul.
As I said last week, Bishop Eleganti will be live and in person at the CIC. He knows what's going on. Anybody who's paying attention knows what's happening here. Even Paul VI, as I pointed out last year during the synod on synodality, even Paul VI, St. Paul VI, even he targeted synodality 50 years ago and warned against it. Here's what Paul VI said about synodality. This was 1972. a speech to the College of Cardinals. You can read it if you want, the Acta Apostolica Sedis. This is number 64, okay, page 498 and 499. One cannot fail to see that this situation, it's talking about synodality, produces very painful and unfortunately dangerous effects for the Church. Confusion and suffering of consciences, religious impoverishment, painful defections in the field of consecrated life, yes, and to the fidelity and indissolubility of marriage, insufficiency of moral barriers against hedonism, he says. But he says the negative reactions we have mentioned also seem to have the dissolution of the ecclesiastical magisterium as their aim. Mic drop. And it was condemned by St. Pius X in Notre Charge Apostolique in 1910. At that time it was called the Sion movement, but it's the same stuff. The Sion movement was basically an iteration of the synodal heresy of the day, which, in that document, St. Pius X condemns as a miserable affluent of the great movement of apostasy. St. Pius X said it's being organized in every country for the establishment of a one world church. He said it will have neither dogmas, nor hierarchy, nor discipline for the mind, nor curb for the passions, and, according to the sainted Pope, under the pretext of freedom and human dignity, it will bring back the reign of legalized cunning and force against the Church, and it will seduce clear-thinking minds if it's not stopped. That was St. Pius X, 100 and some odd years ago, prophesying the one world church, which so many people in the world, in the Church today, are promoting. Pope Pius X was a prophet.
E la capacità del dialogo interreligioso.
One of the things that struck me about all of you here is your ability to engage in interreligious dialogue.
E questo è molto importante.
And this is very important, because if we start to fight amongst ourselves and saying, my religion is more important than yours, my religion is true, yours is not, where will that lead us?
Dove?
Where will it lead us?
Qualcuno risponda, dove?
Someone respond. Where would it lead us? La distruzione.
È cosa così. Tutte le religioni sono un cammino per arrivare a Dio.
Because every religion is a way to arrive at God.
With such shepherds, it's really no surprise that the sheep have become now the playthings of the wolves. The shepherds are simply not defending the sheep anymore. They're not preaching the gospel anymore, right? As Remnant columnist, again, if you're not reading the Remnant, you really need to subscribe to it. Remnant columnist Greg Maresca pointed out over at remnantnewspaper.com that the August 27th massacre in Minneapolis, in which children were shot while attending Mass, well, this is only the latest in a long string, a growing a series of anti-Catholic violence throughout this country. Just last year, Greg Maresca points out, 383 Catholic churches endured 450 attacks across 43 states. There were 284 acts of vandalism, 55 incidents of arson, 28 gun-related attacks, 14 bomb threats, and 47 incidents of assault, disruption of services, and terroristic threats. And as I pointed out last week, one of those assaults, disruption of services, happened right here in my own church. I personally had to walk the freaks out the back door of the church, throw them out of the church when they were verbally assaulting our priest at the communion rail, okay? So this is all happening, whether we want to admit it or not, you know? It's literally open season on the Church of Vatican II, and the church seems to have no defense. The once mighty hierarchy seemed either disinterested or disinclined or just incapable of coming up with a Catholic solution.
Amidst the tragedy that occurred on August 27th at Annunciation Church and School, I am very thankful to all who are encouraging these important discussions about how to protect human life from the plague of gun violence. The simplest starting point in addressing gun violence is the guns themselves.
Now, I know Archbishop Hebda is a good man, you know, but this, I mean, Your Excellency, as a parent, as a father, I'm asking, I mean, would the Catholic Church, in her human element now, is she going to allow the radical left, the Governor Walz of the world, the Is the church going to allow these people to disarm us, even as our children are literally being shot inside of our own Catholic churches? Now, in fairness, His Excellency Bishop Hebda goes on to mention mental health as a big problem in all of this. And indeed, he's right, it is. But here's the thing. I went to Catholic school. My parents, who didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, put the money up to send me through for 8 years of grade school, for example, Catholic school. And therein still, the good sisters in the Catholic schools taught us the catechism, taught us the 10 Commandments, taught us how to be law-abiding citizens, if you will. And they also taught us things like this, that unrepented sin leads to a darkening of the mind, of the intellect, and a loss of the sense of right and wrong. So don't you see, that's what's going on here. It's not the guns. It's like that meme that's floating around. A little kid saying to his teacher, I didn't fail the math test, my pencil failed it. This is how silly it's become. And in all respect, we, the Catholic people, have a right to insist, to demand that our Catholic bishops stop worrying so much about gun control and start preaching self-control. Get back in the Catholic lane. This is the problem. The Catholic lane is empty. Nobody's bothering with it. And all the bishops and all the priests, even the Pope, are switching lanes and going into politics all the time and social uplift, right? It's like they're afraid of the church's teaching. They're afraid to talk about Jesus Christ in that sense. Christ the King, Lord of history, the judge will judge us all in the end. That we have to follow the rules of the church, that we have to follow the 10 Commandments, follow natural law. Why aren't they talking about any of this? I find it offensive that they're talking about gun control now. Again. And I would say, again, I went to Catholic school where they used to teach us the 10 Commandments. Do they still do that? Do they still teach the 10 Commandments in the few Catholic schools that are still open? Do they teach moral theology? Why do our bishops refuse to warn the world, for example, that divorce, let's say, leads to angry and confused and oftentimes violent kids? The breakup of the family is the problem here. Because most of these kids are from broken homes, right? So when's the last time that we heard the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, for example, issue serious guidelines against divorce? Right? If you really want to help these kids. Instead, the Catholic bishops are worried about giving out more annulments, which is just Catholic divorce. They're contributing to the fundamental problem here, it seems to me. How about abortion? What about the mortal sin of abortion? I've noticed pretty much almost all my life, the best bishops, the popes, they're always talking about how abortion robs a child of his or her human dignity. And that's fine. But it's also terrifyingly PC. It's like conservative Republicans that used to be against abortion, period. Now they're pretty much just against partial birth. And pretty soon it's going to be only postpartum slaughtering of babies that they're going to take a stand against, right? Because everybody agrees that partial birth abortion is wrong. Well, everybody agrees, too, that abortion violates human dignity. Duh, right? But what about the Catholic position? Because you know what the Catholic position is? That's based in Scripture and moral theology, right? The Catholic position is about the mortal sin of abortion, which fundamentally offends God. The abortion doctor is guilty of mortal sin, objectively speaking. The woman is guilty. Anybody who contributes to it, the politicians, are all guilty of mortal sin, according to the church's teaching. Why is nobody talking about that anymore? What about the intrinsic evil of infanticide? What about what happens to a given civilization or a culture which legalizes infanticide, killing babies in the womb? What about the natural consequence of that? Up in Canada, now they're killing adults, they're killing kids with this MAID program, letting people kill themselves. This is the culture of death. And it starts with the mortal sin which kills the soul, which darkens the soul and darkens the intellect. That's the problem, Your Excellency, not the guns. This abortion holocaust is sending a clear message to the kids of the world. Hey, if you got a problem with somebody, go ahead and terminate their lives. Well, that's so extreme. Really? If little Johnny or Susie grew up knowing that mommy killed little baby sister in the womb, you don't think the child gets the message that terminating life ain't all that bad, especially if it's inconvenient? People say, man, that's really offensive, man. You can't compare abortion to the Holocaust. Really? You can't? Tell that to Charlie Kirk.
You're comparing abortion to the Holocaust.
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse.
Maybe that's where they took him out, huh? Because he's absolutely right. It is worse. And yet still, even still, the Catholic bishops are worried about gun control. Climate change. Got to get these ICE guys under control because they're trying to firm up the border. That's a big issue because we are a welcoming church. Could they be any more out of touch, friends? And now everyone's talking about Pope Leo. You know, is there going to be a change? Well, there certainly is a change of attitude, but is there going to be a fundamental change? And this has been everyone's examining now and looking at, trying to parse this first interview of Pope Leo. I really hate these papal interviews. He's got a chair. From the chair, he can teach, govern, and sanctify. Why do we need papal interviews? I'm so tired of this, right? And I got it, in fairness, Pope Benedict XVI, I think, was the first. He did it with Peter Seawald back in the day, and I don't remember any pope doing it beforehand. These stupid interviews, you know. This is one tradition, the papal interview, that I wish we could just nix and be done with, because it always causes more trouble, right? Remember when Francis told the atheist Eugenio Scalfari that hell doesn't exist? That was fun, you know. And now Leo's talking to some lady about the alphabet soup people, and we're all like scratching our heads trying to figure out what he's trying to say.
In an exclusive interview with the digital outlet Crux, Pope Leo XIV stated that his attitude towards LGBTQ Catholics will be one of welcome, but without changing the Church's doctrine.
I'm trying not to continue to polarize, promote polarization in the Church. And I'm trying to say, is what Francis said very clearly when he would say, todos, todos, todos. Everyone's invited in. But I don't invite a person in because they are or are not of any specific identity. I invite a person in because he's a son or daughter of God. I think that the Church's teaching will continue as it is, and that's what I have to say about that for right now.
Now, what's he mean? I think the Church's teaching will continue. I think I actually know what he means, right? I think it's sort of an insecure figure of speech, papal figure of speech, if you will, that comes with the spirit of Vatican II, because we are a welcoming church, right? They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to assert. Leo actually does a better job than most of them, but they still, it's like their hands are tied, you know, by this speech and this welcoming attitude, you know. Or maybe Leo's trying to beat the media at their own game, because remember, he was the one that told the bishops of this country back in 2012, look out for the media at what they do with Catholic moral teaching. You remember this?
Catholic pastors who preach against the legalization of abortion or the redefinition of marriage are portrayed as being ideologically driven, severe, and uncaring, not because of anything they say or do, but because their audiences contrast their message with the sympathetic, caring tones of media-produced images of human beings who, because they are caught in morally complex life situations, opt for choices that are made to appear as healthful and good. Note, for example, how alternative families comprised of same-sex partners and their adopted children are so benignly and sympathetically portrayed in television programs and cinema today.
Now there's Father Robert Prevost. I agree with every word of it. Don't you? You know? So now everybody's wondering, is that guy still, is he still in there, holiness? And after this Crooks interview, you got guys like Jimmy Martin, who really, we should not let this clown control the narrative. I mean, I don't know why he always gets to. I certainly don't. I will not take his word on anything. But he claims to have figured it all out. So he takes to X, Father Jimmy does, and he says, Pope Leo's response to this question is very much, Pope Leo's response to this question is very much along the lines of what Pope Francis' response was to me, which I find very helpful. Pope Leo's approach to LGBT Catholics is a continuation of Pope Francis' approach. But if Jimmy's right about that, how do we explain the post-Crooks interview headlines in the press? How do we explain that? Yahoo News, Pope Leo puts the brakes on church reforms. The Washington Post, Pope Leo, in new biography, resists doctrinal change on hot-button issues. Rome reports, Pope Leo, the doctrine on LGBT people is not going to change. The Catholic Herald, Pope Leo on LGBT, all are welcome, but church teaching will continue as it is. The AFP, Pope Leo XIV sought to reassure Catholics in his first interview that he would not change key doctrine on gay marriage and women deacons. Huh. Well, that's interesting. That's how the world reacted to that. Sorry, Father Jimmy, but your take on this is not going to go over big with the ladies on The View, for example. It's not what they saw. Walter and I compiled a little video. This is what the world saw. And we got to understand this because you got Father Jimmy Martin types, you got some Sedevacantists types who want to spin everything Leo does in the worst possible light, the most anti-Catholic light possible, right? But here's how, obviously, looking at those headlines, here's how the world saw Pope Leo's remarks during the Crooks interview.
The Western world is fixated, obsessed with sexuality. I'm trying not to continue to polarize, promote polarization in the church. I think that the church's teaching will continue as it is. Very important. Families need to be supported. They call it the traditional family. The family is father and mother, children.
So that's what they saw. But that doesn't change the fact that there was a lot of hemming and hawing, and in my opinion, and hopefully, and maybe, that was also part of the interview. And this is my point. These papal interviews need to stop because we're all trying to figure it out. What's my takeaway? I'll tell you what my takeaway is. Pope Leo is a post-Vatican II pope. He's a son of the council. His mind was formed by the council. His priestly formation is conciliar. What does that mean? Pope Leo, who I think is a decent man, is obviously struggling with, Father Robert Prevost.
Western mass media is extraordinarily effective in fostering within the general public enormous sympathy for beliefs and practices that are at odds with the gospel. For example, abortion, homosexual lifestyle, euthanasia. Religion is at best tolerated by mass media as tame and quaint when it does not actively oppose positions on ethical issues that the media have embraced as their own. However, when religious voices are raised in opposition to these positions, mass media can target religion, labeling it as ideological and insensitive in regard to the so-called vital needs of people in the contemporary world. The sympathy for anti-Christian lifestyle choices that mass media fosters is so brilliantly and artfully ingrained in the viewing public that when people hear the Christian message, it often inevitably seems ideological and emotionally cruel by contrast to the ostensible humaneness of the anti-Christian perspective.
And today, well, okay, friends, let's think about what the challenge that is out ahead of Pope Leo, right? You get these people, what do you think of LGBT? Where did you come down, LGBTQ, RSU, VWXYZ? What are you going to say? Are you a hater or not? Right? This is Leo, trying to be the Pope of the people, trying to acknowledge that spirit of Francis, right, which dominates everything. So let's think about what the Pope needs to do here. Let's think about the challenge, the predicament, obviously, the predicament that the Pope is in, that all the popes are in, since the Church stopped preaching Catholic moral theology from the pulpit 6 decades ago. See, the thing is, while the hierarchy were getting all exercise over the past half century over climate change, the world took off. The world completely embraces things like gay marriage now, right? Think about this in fairness. Even the ultra-conservative President Donald Trump, according to his own wife, fully accepts gay marriage now.
Donald is the first president to enter the White House supporting gay marriage. Donald is also the first president to appoint an openly gay official to his cabinet.
And whether, the extenuating circumstances notwithstanding, the reality is Pope Leo saw the entire pro-life movement in America vote for that man anyway, right? Every politician in America today, every prominent politician today is down with gay marriage. And it's not just Catholics. The Protestant pastors, the Jewish rabbis, evangelical bishops, sports figures, actors, singers, entertainers, they're all good with gay marriage and the homosexual lifestyle. Some of the most conservative commentators on Fox News, for example, are married homosexuals with adopted children.
And Trump looks up and he's like, I kind of recognize you. And I was like, oh, well, I go on Fox, I'm on Tucker. He said, oh, Tucker, that must be it. And then he turns to you and he goes, and who are you?
He goes, who are you? Because I'm just standing there, like, I don't know,
He goes, who are you? And you go, well, I'm his husband. And he goes, husband? Husband?
You two are married?
You two are married? And then he slaps his hands on the table.
Yeah.
And he goes, I want to stand up. I want to stand up and shake your hands. I think that's great. I think that's just
turns to
great.
Melania, he's like, honey, these two guys are married. And he turns to me, he's like, you guys are too good looking. That's your problem. You're too good looking.
Am I Pope-splaining? No. I give you the times. This is the bed that Vatican II made. Back it up. This is the bed that the modernist revolution that Pope St. Pius X was warning against 125 years. This is the bed that they made. This is the reality now. For 20 years, Catholic churches all over the world have been proudly advertising themselves as gay-friendly and inclusive, tolerant churches, right? Everybody goes along with it. The most conservative cardinal in America a few years ago was praising an NFL football player who came out as gay. You remember this?
Michael Sam, from your home state, the football player, revealed that he was gay, first in the NFL. And you saw the celebration from the president, the first lady, and others saying what a courageous step that was. How did you view it?
Good for him. I would have no sense of judgment on him. God bless you. I don't think. Look, the same Bible that tells us that teaches us well about the virtue of chastity and the virtue of fidelity in marriage also tells us not to judge people. So I would say, bravo.
That's the reality of the Catholic Church in the modern world into which stepped Pope Leo as Pope. And after all that, somehow in 2025, Pope Leo is going to go full-on torquemada on homosexuals in the Catholic Church. You know what I'm a little surprised at? I'm surprised he even said what he said. The doctrine can't change, I don't think, anytime soon. That's hate speech in a lot of countries. But this is the spirit of Vatican II. Remember, the spirit of Vatican II, which abolished the anathema, which got rid of the Inquisition. We are a welcoming church, a tolerant church. So even if a pope wants to defend the doctrine, the moral theology of the church, he can only do so by pleading his case in the court of public opinion, mitre in hand. By your leave, here's what I think. And that, friends, is what the Church of Vatican II has wrought. That's what the Church of Vatican II has made for us, has created for us, for all of us. That's the harsh and horrific reality that traditional Catholics have been praying about and trying to warn people against for 50, 60 years. This is nothing new. Look around you. Emasculated shepherds pleading their case. They all speak with that voice, God knows why. Good morning. Our interest antiphon is on 125. The Lord is my shepherd. Why do they speak like that? I don't know. But they're left begging the world, pathetically begging the world to see how reasonable we are. No, we don't think we're better than you. No, our church is just like yours. No. Oh, God, no. We don't think that ours is superior. We're not guilty of religious supremacism. That's the message. While the sheep the sheep of the world just drive headlong over the cliff, generation after generation after generation. So I actually, honestly, looking at this Crooks interview, I have no idea why anyone would freak out over what Pope Leo said. I'm shocked, just shocked to see that modernism is going on in here. As I said, right after Pope Leo appeared on the loggia. Calm down, guys. What did you expect? What did you think? The revolution was over here? This is the long war. Because on the other hand, in the very same interview, hell just froze over. The Latin Mass is evidently back on the table.
Pope Leo spoke to Crux the other day, and among the issues he talked about was the traditional Latin Mass. I've not had a chance to really sit down with a group of people who are advocating for the Tridentine Rite. There's an opportunity coming up soon, he said. Your Eminence, I know you'll be part of a pilgrimage celebrating the traditional Latin Mass on October 25th at St. Peter's Basilica. Might that be an opportunity for the Pope to at least see people who love this Mass and what it looks like in Technicolor?
Yes, I'm sure it will be a very significant event. I trust the Holy Father will follow it. I know he will, and I'm certain that he will.
Now, again, people say that's who cares? That's just a crumb. No, it's not a crumb. We discussed that last week. I think I'll put the link for last week's program, which went viral, by the way, thanks to you. God bless you all. Where we discussed the Mass is never a crumb, is never a table scrap, right? The Mass, it's the Mass that matters. But I would say now, with Pope Leo, whose entire formation, whose entire priestly life is post-conciliar, he's the first pope for which that can be said. Pope Leo literally knows nothing about the issue of the Latin Mass. When he was down there in Peru for 25 years riding his little burro around, the Latin Mass was not dominating the conversations at the dinner table, believe me, like it has been for us. He doesn't know anything about this issue, right? He says in that interview that, well, if you guys want to have Latin in the Novus Ordo, that's fine. This is the Pope speaking. He doesn't apparently realize that Francis banned Latin in the Novus Ordo, right? He just hasn't been following this debate. And interestingly enough, I had dinner with some of his brother Augustinian priests in Rome. Not one of whom was wearing clericals or a collar, by the way. And we found out quite by accident that they were Augustinian priests. So we had a nice conversation over dinner with them. This was right after Leo was elected. And I asked them about the Latin Mass issue, because at that point people were saying, Prevost was saying the Latin Mass. He's been spotted saying the Latin Mass. I said, I don't believe that for 1 second. And I still don't, okay? And what they said, what these fellows told me, these Augustinian priests, made very clear to us is that they know absolutely nothing about the Latin Mass other than that Cardinal Robert Prevost had never offered it and was in no sense interested in offering it. Okay, so when he says he needs to study it more, when Pope Leo says, we need to study this more, we're going to meet with some people, he means it and know nothing about it. On the other hand, if we have another hand, if Pope Leo is Francis II, Francis 2.0, then answer me this. Why wouldn't he just remind the Crooks lady that Traditionis Custodes has already happened and just say, Roma locuta est causa finita est. Rome has spoken, the matter is settled. That's all he had to do if he's Francis II. So he does seem to be wanting to be pastoral. Thank you, Cardinal Burke. We're going to him and talking to him about this, getting it back on the table. Thank you. And now Leo is calling for further discussion. And by the way, he tells Cardinal Raymond Burke that he can offer the traditional Latin Mass again in St. Peter's Basilica. And can you hear that sound, friends? That's Francis turning in his grave. So what do? We do what we've always done. We hold the Catholic ground. We do not lose hope. We hold the Catholic ground, even when the shepherds do not. Pope Leo is not an evil man, but he surely is a conciliar pope. Is he a lost cause? Maybe, maybe not. It all depends on whether or not Father Robert Prevost is still in there, the priest who blasted the homosexual agenda. Pray to God, friends, that Peter's faith will not fail him, even still. If it does, then we resist him to his face. If it does not, we will defend him to the death. God help us. It's up to him. And the clock is ticking.